You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
The road trip continues for the Atlanta Braves as they stop in Los Angeles to meet old friend Freddie Freeman for the first of three against the Dodgers. And the Braves came up on the short end of a 7-4 score on Monday night in Chavez Ravine. I'm Grant McAuley. He is Jake Mastroianni of the Locked On Braves podcast. And we've got another great Locked On Braves postcast. Despite the score, we're going to get into all the stories and all the things you need to know about today's game. And of course, take a look ahead to game 2 of this series. But before we get into all that, of course, I want to remind you, you need to be subscribing to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. Make sure you hit that bell so you get all the notifications every time we drop a new episode. We appreciate those of you who've already been subscribing to us, leaving those comments, leaving those likes, telling a friend, all that good stuff. It definitely helps out the show. So thank you so much for that. As for tonight's game, I don't know who we need to thank for this one, Jake. It was a pretty tough one. Maybe the baseball gods are the ones to blame for this, but you knew when the Braves met Freddie Freeman again, he was probably going to have something dramatic up his sleeve, and it didn't take long for us to find out that that was, in fact, the way things were going to go on this night out in Los Angeles.
Yeah, no surprise at all. And I know he had talked coming in that his swing just wasn't quite there yet. Well, it looked pretty good tonight, whether he was locking in against his former team or not. Yeah, no other way for him to really start this thing off than an opposite field home run shot over the left center field wall.
Yeah, it was a vintage Freddie Freeman shot, of course, out to left center field, as you mentioned, Jake. And Huascar Ynoa is a guy who has run into some trouble, getting some big outs, putting hitters away, giving up a few home runs, and been kind of having a tough time of it dating back to last year. We'll talk a little bit more about that in this game as well. But for Freddie Freeman, a flair for the dramatic there. His last hit as an Atlanta Brave, a home run in the World Series. His first hit for the Los Angeles Dodgers against the Braves, a home run to beat up on his old club. And that, I don't know if that's ever been done before. The jury is still out on Twitter. I asked several big-time baseball number scribes to help us out with that. But at the time of show, we did not have whether or not somebody's done that before. Either way, a unique storyline for Freddie Freeman and the Dodgers. But let's put that aside for a moment. Let you know what you need to about this game. As the Braves dropped to 5-7, 4 runs, 10 hits, no errors, 6 men left on base. They actually out-hit the Dodgers, who improved to 8-2, 7 runs, 7 hits for them, no errors, 7 men left aboard. Clayton Kershaw, the winner, 2-0. He was cruising along into the middle innings, then ran into some trouble, but he still picks up that win. Huascar Ynoa, meanwhile, now 0-2 after getting knocked out in the 4th inning. And Craig Kimbrell, our old friend, picking up his 3rd save for the LA Dodgers. Game lasted 3 hours and 14 minutes. Crowd of 52,052 were on hand to see it. And Jake, let's jump into this as we will with how we always start things out, which is, are the Braves going to get a good start out of the rotation to set their foundation for this great bullpen? And can the lineup really do enough in order to support the starter on this night? The answer to all of these questions was no. It was not. Another tough one for Huascar Ynoa. We've seen 2 of these this year and a bunch dating back to last year. Just not effective.
Yeah, it is, and it's frustrating because the starting pitching is so up and down right now and so indicative of how the outcome of the game is. I mean, I texted you early on and said, is it really going to be this kind of game? And surprisingly enough, the offense actually did come back and made a game of this, which I was happy to see. But yes, another, poor performance from Huascar Ynoa. Really struggling, especially that second time through the lineup, which we talk about a lot, with just those 2 pitches. He did try to incorporate another off-speed pitch tonight more frequently. And I don't know if it's calling it a changeup or a curveball, but I did like that. And I think that is positive for him going forward. But trying to do that on the fly against the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are a very patient team at the plate. But the walks are a problem. 7 more walks in this game, 41 on the season, which surprisingly is only 6th worst in all of baseball. But the walks are an issue right now. But you can't keep falling behind early, having these big innings, close to getting out of it. And then Trey Turner, Braves killer, has that big hit as well. So, yeah, the up and down, from these starters right now is just, it's so hard to watch and so hard to fall behind, especially when this offense isn't clicking on all years. I know they did make the comeback and made an effort tonight, but they're just still not there yet. They're not that team yet offensively to really overcome these bad starts out of the gate by the starting rotation.
Yeah, and you look at what Huascar Ynoa has been doing for quite some time. I mean, he was really holding the Braves rotation together last year. Then he ran into some trouble in Milwaukee, took his frustrations out on the bench, broke his hand, and that really has been the moment in which his trajectory for the Braves and his spot in rotation really started to change and become questionable at best. I think at this point, how many more times can you continue to send him out there if you do in fact have better options, perhaps on the not just on the 40 man, but on the roster right now? We've seen what Spencer Strider's been able to do. It'll be interesting to see what happens the next time Inoa's turn and rotation comes back up. But as far as the numbers are concerned, dating back his last half a dozen starts into last September, 25 innings, 33 hits, 25 earned runs, 6 homers, 12 walks, 30 punchouts. That's an ERA of 9 and a whip that's approaching 2. Those are just not numbers that you're going to be able to trot out there every fifth day and put yourself in a position to win a baseball game. So for Huascar Ynoa, another rough one. We'll get into some of the other intricacies of this day, both on the mound and, of course, at the plate for the Braves. Before we do, though, want to tell you about Built Bar. All Built Bars covered with 100% real chocolate. They're low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these because they are better. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories and 17 grams of protein as compared to 200 to 300 calories for the average candy bar with a whole bunch of sugar and stuff that you just don't need. At Built Bar, they're all about taste. They make it taste delicious and figure out how to make it healthy. You can go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That is built.com. Now, inside the box score of this game, we saw that it could have really kind of gotten out of hand as the Braves ran into that trouble and Huascar Ynoa was knocked out in the fourth. Sean Newcomb was the first man in from the bullpen. This is a move I kind of questioned, Jake, because I just felt like you did have the opportunity to save your staff a little bit in San Diego. I know you don't want to be trotting every member of the night shift out there in the fourth and fifth and sixth inning. I understand that completely, but I just felt like maybe there was a better way to go about going after Freddie Freeman there in the fourth, trying to extinguish that fire, and then maybe stretching it out with multiple innings from somebody like Colin McHugh. But lots of different things go into pitching changes, but this particular one, not exactly the lever I would have pulled. But I've never managed a big league baseball game.
Yeah, and it's when I saw Sean Newcomb up in the bullpen. No offense to Sean. I love Sean. I want him to figure it out. But that's when I said, okay, we're basically punting this game at that point. And again, I hate to say that about Sean at this point. And I understand, it's early in the game. It's a lefty-lefty matchup, although, whatever the case may be. But I mean, that was the ball game. I mean, that ended up being the ball game right there. If you can get out of that inning, then you give yourself a chance. Now, this is an early, or I guess mid-April game now. So I understand, not wanting to waste all your bullets. A similar difficult decision later in the game. It's a 2-run game, and they're not able to push across another run in the 7th and 8th inning, and he goes with Jackson Stevens instead in the bottom of the 8th. And he gives up another run, adding to that deficit. So some tough decisions for Brian Snitker with the bullpen management tonight. I don't necessarily fault him for any of those decisions, but it's tough because you want those guys, if you have a lead in the next 2 nights, you want them ready to go. But yeah, I mean, that was essentially the ball game, bringing in Newcomb there, giving up that big hit. They did fight back like we talked about, but yeah, that's a key moment. And, I know you wouldn't bring in a guy like Darren O'Day because, again, he wanted the lefty-lefty matchup, but I probably would have preferred something like that, even at that point, more of a low leverage guy that you have some confidence in, creating weak contact there and that is going to throw strikes. So I would have been probably more okay with that move. But yeah, difficult decisions for Brian Snitker in game 1 of this series.
Yeah, there are always difficult decisions throughout each and every Major League Baseball game. I also would have probably pulled the Darren O'Day card out of my deck and perhaps tried to play that one there because that's the kind of situation he's been brought into as a veteran guy who can attack both righties and lefties. He's got that unconventional delivery, can kind of throw you off. Freddie Freeman's going to be a tough out no matter who you're facing. We've seen that for the last decade in Atlanta. He's going to put a professional bat on there. But the 2 inherited runners that Sean Newcomb allowed, then another run, that really kind of stretched out the game. And then the Braves were playing from a 6-0 deficit. That wasn't until Guillermo Heredia took Clayton Kershaw deep to break up the shutout. Then you had Ozzie Albies, who sparked a rally for the Braves that knocked Kershaw out of the game, a 3-run rally for Atlanta with his 4th home run on this road trip, 5 home runs on the season now for Ozzie Albies. He's been swinging a hot bat. And, of course, we saw what Matt Olson is capable of doing, as if we needed a reminder. 3 more hits for him, a double, a run scored. He leads Major League Baseball with 19 hits. He is second only to Juan Soto with 11 walks. This is a guy who's getting on base at an incredible clip. Austin Riley, a multi-hit game. Good to see that. Another thing I kind of circled on my scorecard anyway, that ground rule double where Olsen had to pull up at third. Not only did it keep Matt from having the chance to score if it's rattling around there in right field and Mookie Betts is having to chase it down, but the way that Austin hit it with that slice, he might have had a chance for a triple. So it might have been Austin Riley scoring on a ground ball and perhaps being another run for the Braves. They did lose by 3, so we're kind of nitpicking just a little bit here, but those were a couple of the highs for the Braves offense. One of the lows, though, that we saw, Dansby Swanson, 2 more strikeouts against Kershaw. No shame in that. He struck out a lot of guys in his career, but for Dansby, 20 punchouts and just over 40 at bats on the year now, I believe 42 as the night ended. A dismal start for the Braves shortstop, and maybe a day's rest and just to clear his head might be in order if this goes on much longer. But this is an awful lot of strikeouts in a very little amount of games, Jake.
It is. He'll get hot at some point, but when you start off the year like this,
Mhm.
it's really difficult to watch. I hate it for Dansby. I'm sure we're going to look back at the end of the season and say, okay, it was a typical Dansby Swanson year. At least I hope that's the case. But yeah, when you come out of the gates like this, you're in a contract season, essentially trying to prove you're the future at shortstop for the Braves. It's a tough go. And the Braves get a leadoff runner on in the 9th inning. You're thinking, here comes a rally and a double play to just completely kill that momentum there. So it's hard to watch. It's almost cringeworthy right now for Dansby Swanson. And I love him. I'm a big supporter of him, big fan of him as well. But things are not going the greatest for him to start the season.
Yeah, over the course of the 162, he always seems to come up with more than a handful of big hits and big moments and big plays for the Braves. I mean, he was one of the big contributors for them last year. Even if he is one of the streakier hitters that they have at the plate, he is a guy that finds those big moments. He has a nose for him, as they say. And he's a guy that you'd like to have up there when the lights are brightest and in those biggest spots. Because if you go back and look at his numbers, his splits throughout his career, he's a guy that loves to hit in the big high pressure situations with runners on base. And more times than not, he's among the Braves' most productive hitters in those situations, but not looking like that here in the early going of the season. Again, the Braves with a 7-4 loss to the Dodgers in game 1 of this series. Let's get you set for game 2 as we'll get into the pitching matchup in a moment. Before we do, though, I want to let you know betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of MLB season. Head to betonline.net today to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts. So starting for the Braves in game 2 of this 3-game set, it'll be Max Fried. He, of course, is no stranger to the Dodgers, no stranger to the Los Angeles area. He'll be on the mound opposite Walker Buehler, a guy who the Braves touched up in the NLCS a year ago. And a lot of storylines happen when the Braves and Dodgers are together. We had Freddie Freeman with a home run and a couple of walks and a couple of runs scored in this game, but now it's Max Fried back at home in the LA area and looking for his first win of the 2022 season, Jake. And I can think of no better day for him to get it than on Tuesday at Chavez Ravine.
And he's due for some things to go his way, right? I mean, it's been a tough start to the season for Max. He's back home at a team that he has, had some ups and downs against himself, but even in the postseason last year, had a really good start and a really bad start. So it's time for Max Fried. He's had two tough starts to start the year, things not going his way. So looking for him to have a typical Max Fried start on Tuesday.
Well, it's Max Fried, who is winless in 2 starts, 0-2 on the year. Walker Buehler, 1-0. He has pitched well in his early season work for the Dodgers. And, of course, we know he's one of the tougher right-handers in the game of baseball and one of the big contributors every year to the Dodgers as they look to make their march to October and right on through. Did run into the Braves last year, and in particular, Mr. Eddie Rosario. I don't want to get out of here without mentioning that Eddie found his second hit of the year. Maybe all he needed, Jake, was just to see some Dodgers pitching so he could get himself right again.
Yeah, it's great to see. And coming off the bench and doing that in a big moment. Hopefully this does get him going. The Braves need him to really get going.
Yeah, they need all the contributions they can get. One other big story, if you've been monitoring and following the Braves in the early season, it's been when is Ronald Acuna Jr. coming back? Well, Tuesday night, Jacksonville, Florida, AAA Gwinnett Stripers against the Jumbo Shrimp of Jacksonville. Those are great names. It'll be Ronald Acuna Jr. who begins his rehab assignment with the AAA club and tentatively targeting being back with the Braves in the first homestand of the month of May. So we'll hopefully be able to tell you a lot about some big things that Ronald Acuna Jr. is doing, and we'll be able to call his name at the top of the Braves lineup sooner than later. But for right now, the Braves have got to go with what they got And they got to go up against the Los Angeles Dodgers and Walker Buehler tomorrow with Max Fried on the mound. First pitch at Dodger Stadium at 10:10 Eastern time. Well, Jake, it was a tough night for the Braves, an emotional night in a lot of ways, a mixed bag, I guess is what we could call it. But the Braves come up short, a 7-4 loss to the Dodgers. Thanks for joining us, of course, on the Braves Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that bell so you get the notifications each and every time we drop a new episode of the show. Jake, again, a tough one for the Braves, 7-4. The Dodgers come out on the right side of that. We will catch all of you guys tomorrow night after the Braves and Dodgers in Game 2 of their 3-game series. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley, and we will catch you on the Braves Postcast tomorrow. So long, everyone.